Welcome in YouTube. We are going to continue to read the DOJ report. The first few days, we got through chapter one, the introduction. The chapter one. Chapter one was hard. If you missed that, go back and watch it. Yesterday's and today's after we get done will be uploaded into that playlist. It's a hard read. The last 2 days have been an extremely hard read. We've done this once before, 2 years ago, but there's a lot of information that has came out. So just reviewing everything is hard. So, but with that being said, let's get into it. Like I said, we are starting on chapter 2 today, and this is tactics and equipment, so it's not going to be as hard of a read as these last few days have been, but it's going to be extremely informational for those of you that haven't heard these things, that don't know about the tactics and equipment that go into this. So this is really, really imperative that we hear this. So, Chapter 2, Tactics and Equipment. Police active shooter response tactics have evolved and changed over the years, driven by a variety of high-profile incidents and a growing understanding of these unique situations. Throughout most of history, the police response to an active shooter incident was to secure a perimeter and call out a special weapons and tactics team, and, in some cases, negotiators. Most officers lacked specialized advanced training and preparation to handle such situations. The watershed moment in tactical changes occurred following the Columbine High School massacre in 1999. The first call to 911 from Columbine High School was received within 1 minute of the first shot being fired. While the first law enforcement officer arrived on scene within 5 minutes, it took 47 minutes for the first law enforcement officer to make entry into the high school, even though shooting by the two subjects ended just 13 minutes after the first shot was fired. That's not accurate. That's not accurate at all. And I'm glad that they did that, because in Columbine, they actually had a school resource officer. They had an SRO. He was a sheriff's officer. So, what the fuck? What the fuck? From the first shot fired, each passing minute robbed innocent students and staff who had been injured in the attack of the opportunity to be located, triaged, and evacuated by first responders to a higher level of trauma care. All right, guys. And with that, before we go any further, we are moving completely away from TikTok for tonight's live and going into YouTube. So if you are not on the YouTube, go over there. It's at cross0524. We will be shutting this down in about 30 seconds, TikTok. If you want to continue to hear and read and understand what is going on over here, I highly suggest coming over here and seeing the rest of it. Give me one more second, guys. All right. Like I said, one last time, guys. Leaving TikTok for tonight, going over to the tube at cross0524, and we will continue there. All right, tube. I appreciate y'all being here, and we are going to continue. Like I was saying a little bit earlier before we started, this has been TikTok has been fucking people over. So, but we are going to go ahead and continue. All right. In January 2000, Colorado Governor Bill Owens established the Columbine Review Commission to review the aftermath of the tragic Columbine High School mass shooting that resulted in the murder of 12 students and one teacher. The commission's proceedings revealed that traditional training for officers responding to major incidents like Columbine emphasized that the task of first responders was to contain and control until the arrival of a SWAT team. Several law enforcement experts noted that prior to Columbine, in most emergencies, time was on the side of the responding officers. Past practice and training counseled the first responding officers on the scene of a crisis, such as a hostage scenario, to contain and control the scene until a SWAT or tactical team arrived. Those specialized units would have the proper equipment and training to resolve the situation. However, with Columbine, time was not on the side of the police because the suspects controlled a large public building with numerous victims. Moreover, it was an active situation. During one of the commission's 15 public hearings, law enforcement expert tacticians and associations such as the National Tactical Officers Association, the NTOA, testified that the new paradigm for responding to crisis like Columbine is rapid deployment. This training paradigm focuses on preparing responding officers, not SWAT teams, for immediate entry into structures under the circumstances similar to Columbine, i.e., active perpetrators in control of a school or other large public buildings where many potential victims are present. After hearing from the law enforcement experts, the Governor's Commission recommended that all first responding law enforcement officers, and especially all school resource officers, receive training in the concepts and skills of a rapid emergency deployment. Rapid emergency deployment puts significant responsibility on first responding officers who may not be fully equipped or trained as a SWAT member. First responders are also instructed to go towards the violent offender, if necessary, bypassing injured victims and placing themselves in harm's way. When seconds count, the ability to quickly and effectively get to the assailant and stop the violence is paramount. Now, here's the problem, right? Like, here's the problem. Why? These officers knew that, right? These officers fucking knew it. It's been this way since 1999. It was literally 23 years later. 23 years later, these officers, this has been drilled into their head for 23 fucking years. And they just ignored it. They just ignored it. And I don't understand. Real quick, thank you so much, Megan, for the $6.99 for on the super chat. I'm still not used to the super chats, but I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. Let me see. The commission made no specific proposals regarding the weaponry and protective gear that responding officers in such a situation should have. However, it did recommend that if responding officers are trained in rapid deployment tactics, enabling them to pursue and apprehend armed perpetrators in large public buildings like a school, they should have weapons and protective equipment available for such a situation. The tactic of surrounding the school and waiting for a SWAT team was criticized for the prolonged response time. Active shooter incidents required new response tactics to be researched, developed, tested, trained, and implemented across the law enforcement profession, unless you're in UValde or the state of Texas. What was previously an incident for SWAT to respond to was becoming recognized as a frontline patrol officer responsibility. Tactics on response to an active attacker incident could no longer rely on the tools, expertise, personnel, and specialized training of a fully assembled SWAT team. Instead, the profession needed to develop actionable guidance, direction, and training that enabled a patrol officer to respond to an active shooter event as quickly and safely as possible by moving towards the threat, stopping the killing, and stopping the dying. In the active attacker incident, time is not on law enforcement's side. What did Arredondo say? What did he say? Time is on the side? Like he said that. He said that several times. Time is on our side. Time is on our side. Was time really on Arredondo's side? Just saying. He truly screwed the pooch. Truly. All right. Training needed to be focused on quickly neutralizing the threat with the tools routinely carried by the first responding patrol officer or readily available in their patrol vehicle. Training also needed to focus on law enforcement triaging of the injured and providing basic life-saving medical aid to stabilize their condition and rapid evacuation to a higher level of medical care. Today's training officers in an active shooter response generally include the following concepts and tactics: gathering intelligence while en route, seeking out intelligence upon arrival, communicating the location of the threat, conditions of the scene, actions of on-scene law enforcement, and needs from follow-on responders, and moving towards the threat efficiently and effectively. Now, Adrian Gonzalez, he gathered intelligence while en route. I will give him that. He did. He did seek out intelligence upon arrival on scene, right? He was asking where it was. He was asking Miss Flores where the shooter was and everything like that. Or maybe he wasn't even asking. She was saying it, so he knew where he was at. He did communicate the location of it. The only problem is that he didn't move towards the threat efficiently and effectively. Like, that's the problem. That's the fucking problem. And there's more. He didn't eliminate the threat. Identifying locations of victims and assessing for physical injuries. He knew the location of the victims. He just didn't move upon it. Well, neither did any of the 77 or the 376. I should say that. None of them did that. Triaging injured victims for evaluation to a higher level of medical care. You can't really triage a whole lot of the people in rooms 111 and 112. There was some. Luckily, thankfully, there were some. But when you have 21 dead, there's no triaging them. Evacuating injured to a higher level of medical care. I don't even know if he did that. Oh, shit. 1 second, guys. Since Columbine, law enforcement has continued to learn from these incidents. That sentence right there is fucking wild. That sentence right there is so fucking wild. Since Columbine, law enforcement has continued to learn from these incidents, meaning that we keep, as a country, we keep allowing these things to fucking happen. Why? Why do we do that? Like, literally, think about this, guys. The other day, I even made a video about this the other day. When cars were killing a shit ton of kids, we started enforcing things. Slowly and surely, it did get done over a period of a decade or two, right? 3. but we implemented things to make it safer. When Tylenol was getting messed with, what did we do? We pulled them all off the shelf, right? Then we put those fucking annoying caps on there that you have a hard time fucking poking through sometimes, right? That's what we did. When those front dropping cribs were responsible for a shit ton of infant deaths, we got rid of them. We recalled them and we remade it, right? Lawn darts. 3 people were killed by lawn darts, completely banned. Guns, firearms, mass shootings. We can just continue to fucking do them because what? Anyways. Since Columbine, law enforcement has continued to learn from these incidents, identifying lessons learned and refine training and tactics accordingly. Although there is little data or research specifically on law enforcement training and policies prior to Columbine, it is widely recognized that law enforcement policies, training, and response has evolved since that time to incorporate the needs to immediately address the threat and differentiate barricade situations from active shooter scenarios. First and foremost, there has been the consistent recognition that law enforcement needs the training and tools to immediately identify and neutralize the threat. This was the principal finding from the Columbine tragedy. Active shooter incidents at Virginia Tech in 2007, the Washington Navy Yard building in 2013, the Route 1 Harvest Festival in Las Vegas in 2017, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland in 2018, and others have all highlighted the importance of this in saving lives. Additionally, as described in the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Alert Center's courses developed in conjunction with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the priority of life scale shifted post-Columbine so that innocent civilians were at the top of the scale, followed by law enforcement, and last, attackers. Post-Columbine, rapid deployment in a crisis is predicated on the first 4 or 5 responders forming an active shooter response team and making entry. In a situation where seconds count, any delay in response could be detrimental to potential victims. However, due to the different response times to an active shooter situation, the hard and fast recommendation of having a 4 to 5 member rapid deployment response team has been reduced to where some agencies authorize a single officer to enter an active shooter location. Recent tactical training also emphasizes solo officer response when the situation demands. These tactics have arisen due to the incidents where immediate action by a lone officer could have helped save lives. The establishment and proper use of an incident command structure has also been a common lesson across incidents, as was prominently the case in the active shooter response at the Washington Navy Yard building in 2013. Though law enforcement entered the building within minutes, it took over an hour to locate and kill the shooter due to the size of the building. Among the key lessons, I really think they did that on purpose. I really think that they added some pun into that. Among the key lessons learned was the value of establishing an incident command structure early on to coordinate resources. Incident command is discussed more fully in Chapter 3, Leadership, Incident Command, and Coordination. Another common theme in lessons learned from the past active shooter incidents is the need for timely medical triage and evacuation. Incidents at the Century 16 Theater in Aurora in 2012, the Washington Navy Yard building in 2013, the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida in 2016, and Route 91 in Vegas in 2017 highlighted the need for law enforcement responders to be equipped with tourniquets, have basic training to immediately threat treat and triage victims and deploy tactics that will get victims to medical professionals as soon as possible in order to save lives. So we have all of these lessons. We have all of this information from all these years past, right? Because we continue to allow these things to happen and we don't do anything to help prevent them. So then, like always, instead of being proactive, we're reactive. So we have years, 23 plus years, countless numbers of active shooting situations to look at and study and learn and do better. And they just threw that all out the window on May 24th, 2022. Just threw it completely out the window. The school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School brought to light the need for a solo officer response to such incidents, following criticism of the single school resource officer on duty for not confronting the shooter. Just recently, the effectiveness of a quick solo response to an active shooter situation was evident in the May 6, 2023 shooting at a mall in Allen, Texas, where a lone police officer at the mall on an unrelated assignment heard the gunfire and rushed towards the suspect, killing him. Tragically, using an AR-15 style rifle, the assailant killed 8 innocent victims and injured at least 7 others. But this shooter was stopped by a lone officer. 24 years have passed since the tragic events at Columbine High School. It'll be 27 years this year. And yet our nation and law enforcement continue to grapple with the persisting problem of mass shootings, highlighting the need for consistent training and preparation. No, fuck no. And yet our nation, we can talk on the law enforcement here in a minute, and yet our nation continues to grapple with the persisting problem of mass shootings. That is because we keep allowing them to fucking happen. We refuse to do anything that would help prevent these things. AWBs, universal background checks, red flag laws, safe storage laws, written and physical tests before purchasing, psych evals before purchasing, licensing, insuring, registering. All of these things could help significantly drive those numbers down. But we, as a country, as a society, as a nation, have just said no. We are too worried about hurting grown men's and women's feelings, like, oh, I can't have my gun, to actually care about children's lives. Our government cares more about the money that comes into their pockets, telling them to continue to allow these things to happen, because every time a mass shooting happens, the gun industry, they make more money. We're more worried about all of that than the fact that guns are the number one killer of children. And it's fucking sickening. And law enforcement continue to grapple with the persisting problems of mass shootings. Well, if they were so sick and fucking tired of them, first of all, which I stand 10 toes down on my shit all the time, ACAB, I don't give a fuck. But if they really cared, if they really wanted to help, they would have done what they did back in the 90s. And I don't think a whole lot of people know what they did in the 90s. In the 90s, the cops came together and said, we need to get these ARs off the fucking streets. Fast forward it 30 fucking years. Now they're like what cop comes out and speaks up? Point them to me. Like point them out to me. Send them to my direction. Send me in their direction. I will gladly have a fucking talk with them to try to help this, because the primary group of individuals that always vote against common sense gun reform are the right. What does the right do? They tend to back the blue. Well, here's the problem. If the blue stands up and is like, this is a fucking problem, we were so scared of a fucking assault rifle that we took 77 minutes on a 376 V1 situation. Maybe we could get some shit going. Maybe we should get some shit fucking going. Give me 1 second, guys. Oh. And let me just touch on this real quick. And let me just talk on this before we continue, right? Because here's a problem that I've been seeing. A lot of people say that they care. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, I'm here," and everything. But I want y'all to notice something. From the amount of people that we have currently versus the amount of people that we typically have on TikTok, especially before TikTok went to shit, where the fuck they at? Where the fuck are they at? If something inconveniences most people in just the slightest way, they'll just drop everything. People say they want to learn about this. They say they want to be educated. I'm giving that information out right here. We're going through it together right now, like we've been doing, right? Where's all those people? But that is a discussion that we can have much more in depth at a later time. So, without griping too much. The scope. This review examined the tactics and pieces of equipment that were contemplated, sought, and deployed over the course of the incident response, beginning with the initial officer's approach from outside Robb Elementary and ending approximately 77 minutes later with the medical triage of victims inside classrooms 111 and 112. The assessment that follows was based on primary and secondary interview data with involved officers, analysis of body-worn cameras, and closed-circuit television footage, and where applicable, agency policies and training on various tactical responses, equipment, and tools. In preparing this chapter, the Critical Incident Review CIR team benefited from the expertise of subject matter experts who assisted in developing the observations and recommendations for this chapter. Where not otherwise cited, the practices identified in this chapter derive from the experts' collective knowledge and experience. Throughout the incident response, there were at times much discussion with deliberation among officers on scene, making it somewhat difficult to hear and understand what was being said by whom. At other times, there was a silence, and the mindset of officers in the hallway at the time was unclear. Relatedly, there were at times some direction and coordination happening, and at other times none. When it is clear that a particular tactic or piece of equipment was deliberated or its use was directed by an individual or group on scene, we make note of that in the analysis below. This chapter reviews major tactical responses and deployments, including tools and equipments, over the course of the law enforcement response to Robb Elementary. Give me 1 second, guys. Was their mindset unclear, though, Amy? No, it wasn't. It was pretty clear. It was pretty fucking clear. Their mindset was, I don't want to get capped. I mean, literally, they said it how many fucking times? We know what their mindset was. Active shooter tactics. This section describes fundamental principles of active shooter response, room clearing and evacuations, and stack formation room entry. It then provides an analysis of the tactics deployed during the law enforcement response at Robb Elementary, equipment use and deployments. This section describes the fundamentals of select types of equipment used or considered during the law enforcement response at Robb Elementary. It then provides an analysis of the equipment deployed during the law enforcement response at Robb Elementary. What? Each section discusses the general principles and best practices related to the particular topic and any relevant background before analyzing what occurred on the ground at Robb Elementary. The chapter concludes with observations and recommendations before delving into the review of each of the topics listed above. It is important to emphasize that officers on scene should have recognized the incident as an active shooter scenario and moved and pushed forward immediately and continuously towards the threat until the room was entered and the threat was eliminated. That did not occur. Yeah, it didn't occur, right? It didn't. And what Corpus Christi just did, what those jurors just did, what the state of Texas just did, was say you don't have to follow any of your training. You don't have to do anything. You can sit on your ass and twiddle your thumb and, you know, just fucking cover your hands with fucking the soap on the wall. You know, you can do anything but actively go in there and save children's lives, and I'd say, okay. We have no problem with that. In fact, don't even go into the hallway. Stay outside. That's the Texas way. That's the UValde way. That's also apparently the Corpus Christi way as well. Before delving into the review of each of the topics, oh shit, I already read that. Instead, officers, including leadership on scene, treated the incident as a barricaded situation, which resulted in significant delay before the shooter was actively engaged by law enforcement. This is the single most critical tactical failure in the incident response. Nothing offered in the assessment below should be construed to mitigate or justify that failure of action. Let me see here. Braden says, what I've never understood is I've always supported gun control, and I carry every day, legally concealed, and I'll be the first to admit it's scary how easy of a process it is to conceal carry legally. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing, right? And that's where we need a lot of help from other law-abiding gun owners, right? Is to just to exactly what you said. Like, it's too easy. It is way too easy to do that. Something has to change, because nothing that gets implemented like affects me being able to purchase a firearm. You know, it doesn't. The only people that it affects is the people that shouldn't have them. Active shooter tactics. When a law enforcement officer responds to an active shooter event, the lessons learned from Columbine are that first responders should react quickly and confront the shooter to prevent further killing and to render first aid to victims. The difficulty confronting first responders is balancing the goals of officer safety with engaging the shooter to save innocent lives. Police Academy training emphasizes preservation of life, officer safety, and the use of force commensurate with the situation. However, in an active shooter situation, officers should be trained to confront and stop the subject's actions immediately. This immediacy of action mitigates the risk to potential victims. Alert trains officers on the priority of life scale, which lists victims, injured and uninjured first, followed by law enforcement and then the subject. The following subsections outline some of the key aspects of tactical response to an active shooter incident. Active shooter versus barricaded subject. Barricade and active shooter situations require different procedures, tactics, and mindsets for a law enforcement response. In an active shooter situation, there is an ongoing dynamic scenario unfolding wherein the subject is targeting and killing people. Priority concerns of law enforcement are the neutralization of the threat, the prevention of more injuries and death, and beginning to triage and provide appropriate medical aid to the injured, as described in the introduction to this chapter. Oh shit, I just read that as a fucking run-on sentence. As described in the introduction to this chapter, an active shooter requires immediate response, even if that means entry by a single officer, as the primary goal is to stop the shooter as quickly as possible. Quick and clear communication with other first responders is essential in active shooter situations, and they need to rapidly assemble into a response team using sound tactical formation, assessing their environment, and moving rapidly towards the threat. The International Association of Chief of Police's, the IACP, model policy for active shooter defines active shooting as an incident in which one or more armed persons have used or are reasonably likely to use deadly force in an ongoing manner, and where persons have been injured, killed, or are under imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm by such persons. Notably, as per IACP's model policy, active shooting is inclusive of a subject's past actions, i.e. have used, and presumed imminent actions are reasonably likely to use regarding the use of deadly force in an ongoing manner. An individual that has engaged in active shooting and has access to victims should never be considered anything other than an active threat, and the law enforcement response to such circumstances should align with active shooter response principles. A barricaded subject, on the other hand, generally involves a subject or suspect who is being sought by law enforcement, has placed themselves in a physical location that is not immediately accessible, and has refused orders to exit. In such situations, the law enforcement response includes operational containment of the subject while attempting to negotiate a peaceful resolution. In a barricaded situation, there's typically communication between an officer, oftentimes a negotiator, and the subject. Unlike active shooter situations, time is on the side of law enforcement, who can marshal resources such as negotiators, SWAT teams, and specialized equipment and tools, and continually assess options to resolve the situation as described by IACP's advisory board. A triggering point in a barricade situation is whether the subject engages in hostile actions towards victims, bystanders, or officers, which justifies the initiation of direct law enforcement action to prevent or stop such behavior. Like many situations in law enforcement, the nature of the threat can evolve over the course of an incident, and therefore, a barricaded subject can become an active shooter incident and necessitate an entirely different response, such as whichever officers are on scene at that moment, transitioning into an immediate tactical solution. So, what that says, in other ways, right, is, or in other words, I should say, is an active shooter situation can never become a barricaded situation, but a barricaded situation can become an active shooter situation. So when these officers are at the school and it has already been deemed an active shooter situation, because it is indeed, in fact, an active shooter situation, it cannot go down to barricaded situation. That's what that's saying, essentially. Let me see here. Give me 1 second, guys. And once again, I do appreciate everybody coming over to the tube. It really does show who is actually here learning and actively fighting instead of just doing what is a trend or what is cool on TikTok. I truly appreciate that. Oh. Let's see. How many chapters are there to this document? Let's see. We're on page 125 right now. We can go ahead and check real quick. I know there's 610 pages. All right, 125. So there is a couple of different appendixes, right? So right now we're on Appendix C, the observations and recommendations. So we're on Chapter 2. Oh, wait. No, we're not. We're still back here. So we're on Chapter 2, Tactics and Equipment. Or no. We're on 125, so we're already past that. We're in Chapter 3. I don't know why it just did that. We're on Chapter 3. Let me get back up here real quick. It shows 8 chapters total, and then the appendix. And it has all of that information afterwards. So, but yeah, that's we're on page 125 right now. There's 610. This is a very slow and methodical read at times, just for the simple fact that I can't just read through it and not fucking say shit half the time. You know? All right. Where the fuck were we? Oh. Apparently it didn't take us to 125. But we're getting back into the pictures and shit here in a second so y'all can see this. All right. In summary, an active shooter rarely ceases to be an active shooter and always remains an active shooter so long as the shooter has access to victims. Active shooter response protocols indicate that an active shooter's immediate past actions and reasonably assumed imminent actions, along with the presence of victims, all determine what actions law enforcement should take. Room clearing and evacuation. During an active shooter incident, the first priority of responding officers is to eliminate the threat. The first responding officers will not be in position to aid and facilitate in the evacuation of other victims who are locked down in or within the vicinity of the building and the location. Now, think about this, guy. Think about this. We're going to highlight this one more time real quick, just so we can focus on it. The first responding officers will not be in a position to aid and facilitate in the evacuation of other victims who are locked down in or within the vicinity of the building and location. What did everybody on that south side hallway do? What did every first responding officer on the south side hallway do? They aided and facilitated the evacuation. But, I mean, let's back it up. During an active shooter incident, the first priority of responding officers is to eliminate the threat. So they got there and they said, fuck that. And that's what they said. Fuck that. If there are officers or others on scene that can assist with evacuations to the extent that can be done safely and not at the expense of eliminating the active shooter threat, evacuations should begin as soon as possible. Evacuations of victims and others who remain within the hot zone of a mass violence area are a priority action for responders. A hot zone is a hazardous area that is usually considered unsafe, and only designated responders are authorized to remain for reasons of rescue, recovery, and containment. A warm zone is usually a transition space leading to a cold zone, which is a safe area. Victims should be guided to a designated safe and secured location outside of the hot zone to receive medical triage, emotional support, and basic needs such as water and restrooms. Other important practices for evacuations from an active shooter incident include identify safe routes that are not in the line of the active shooter or law enforcement fire, which may or may not be those that have been exercised and predetermined by school safety plans. Communication among all first responders on the status, direction, and destination of evacuees while not broadcasting such information to the active shooter. Clearly mark rooms and buildings which have been cleared, secured, and evacuated. This can be done using items such as tape, markers, chalk, or things found within the building that can clearly distinguish that a room is cleared. Quickly assess the physical structure of the building, including walls and doors, for their penetrability to gunfire. Gather any intelligence from evacuees that can be ascertained about the building, the shooter, or other facts and circumstances of the location and incident, and ensure medical triage and transport is established for any injured evacuees. On average, an active shooter incident is over within approximately 12 minutes from first notification, whether ended by the shooter dying by suicide, law enforcement responders killing or apprehending the shooter, or civilians, bystanders on scene restraining or, in some rare cases, killing the active shooter. If civilians on scene have not been evacuated, it is likely that evacuations will occur after the shooter is neutralized. One second, guys. Okay, sorry about that. I was just checking in on something. Okay, where were we at? However, if more extended response situations where the shooter is being searched for, or in the case of the Robb Elementary active shooter incident inside a classroom, there may be a limited window of opportunity to quickly assess and balance the risk posed by crossfire that would put victims in harm's way, whether by remaining locked down or evacuating while officers on scene approach the classroom where the shooter is and make entry, likely engaging in a gunfight as a result. This should never detract from the priority goal of eliminating the threat, for which action should be immediate. The interior walls in the West Building, as is the case in many school buildings throughout the country, were sheetrock and easily penetratable. Listen, guys. I have been just going way too fucking fast today. I'm going to have to slow it the fuck down. Because I keep trying to read ahead and I keep fucking up. So bear with me, guys. Were sheetrock and easily penetrated by gunfire. Rounds from the shooter's rifle penetrated multiple walls throughout the West Building. Given the configuration of the building and location of the subject, any person remaining inside the building was a risk for lethal injury from either the subject or law enforcement rounds. Stack formation and room entry. Dynamic room entries are among the most dangerous operations in law enforcement, where a team of officers enter a room and must engage in close quarter combats with an armed assailant who may be in a tactically advantageous position. While there are some different schools of thought on the officer's patterns of movement upon entering the room, trainers and practitioners generally acknowledge that it is often a matter of preference and officers should use the tactics they have been trained on. The key to successful stack formation and room entry is seamless coordination and a synchronization between the team members in any condition. This can be challenging with an empty team composed of officers from various agencies, especially if they have not trained together and may use different tactics and communications, i.e. verbal and nonverbal. So what we're going through here, what we're seeing here a lot is the UValde officers, and not just the UValde officers, all the officers there, just shit the bed. They didn't do any of these things. You know what I'm saying? They didn't. They absolutely did fuck all. I like that the mods actually handle things. I've been in multiple communities by now, and I'm used to mods just kind of letting shit go. So the problem here is, right, this group that of amazing individuals that do mod, we come from a different place. Like we did TikTok a whole lot, and it was good for a while. But you get the craziest of crazies. Like you get the wildest people that come in, victim blame, tell me that my son deserved it, tell me all of these things, you know? And so my mods are just amazing, and they make sure that the roles that we have in place are executed correctly, you know? And so I appreciate them so much, because without them, this wouldn't continue going. Because here's the thing. We did the arguing and the quote unquote debating and everything like that for a while, for 2 years, right? But the vast majority of those idiots, they don't want to learn, right? They don't. And so you will get some of the most heinous people saying the most egregious shit, and nothing ever happens, which is one of the reasons why we are moving over here to the tube. So, yeah, big shout out to the mods who keep the chat going smoothly, because at the end of the day, what we're here for is education, entertainment, and explaining everything, right? And that can't happen if, you know, it's just a wasteland in the chat section. So, big shout out. Give me 1 second. Let me see here. Ideally, the entry team wants to enter the room with an element of surprise, speed, and violence of action. It's just... And violence of action? Or the action of violence? Like, I don't know. I don't know if they said that correctly. And real quick, before we continue any further, because once again, y'all support means absolutely everything to me. Y'all allow me to continue to fight and to educate and everything. I do have a few shout outs as we continue. Once again, shout out to Megan, who sent the initial super chat earlier. But also, thank you so much, Hope, for the 20, and say, keep up the good fight, brother. Absolutely, 100%. Also, thank you so much, Dan, for the 5. I appreciate you, man. Y'all are fucking amazing. Y'all are so appreciated. I think we're going to have to make a violence of action fucking... Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Check this, guys. Hold on. 1 second. Yeah, check this. Okay. Right here, DOJ report, page 126. It says, ideally, the entry team wants to enter the room with an element of surprise, speed, and violence of action. Why is it that the UValde officers did not use the violence of action? They used the silence of non-action, is essentially what they did. That doesn't make any fucking sense for me. These fundamentals of a successful room entry can be compromised if a doorway is not properly assessed. and breached as needed. Holy shit. Yeah. Have they been, did they assess the door at all? Guys, we went through I want y'all's answers. We went through the minute by minute. If you haven't seen the minute by minute, go back to yesterday's. Right? Do that. And you can see it. But for those of y'all that did see it, when did they assess the doorway? They didn't. Never, never, never. So, there was no speed. There was no violence of action. There wasn't even assessing the doorway. Like, you know what here's the thing. Y'all ever seen, like, this is what these UValde officers look like to me. You ever seen those, those keys, those little tight keys or whatever? Y'all know the ones that we're talking about, right? Those big plastic keys and everything for kids and everything. What I view UValde as just a bunch of toddlers screaming about keys, and there's one set, and it's not in the big group of where all the toddlers are. Because here's the thing, they didn't even know how to use it once they got them. Okay. Sorry. We're trying some new shit as well. So I'm working on back end shit too, because this, not that. Let's see. Hold on one second, guys. Why is it not showing? Sorry, guys. We don't have this unlocked as we do over on the TikTok, so still working on that. One second. Let me see if this works. Hold on. All right. Anyways, we'll get back to the reading. Sorry about that, guys, and I do appreciate y'all. Appreciate your patience in that matter. Oh, fuck, we're going straight into it. Checking the doorknob to see if it is unlocked should be the first immediate approach. And it never happened. Did it? Awesome, but I don't think it did it when it was supposed to. I think it did it when it was supposed to. Anyways, checking the doorknob to see if it is unlocked should be the first immediate approach. And that was not an approach that they did at all. They never checked the door. 77 minutes and they didn't check the fucking doorknob. This is not only the easiest method, but also enables the entry team to maximize the surprise and speed with which they enter, putting them in a tactically advantageous position. If a door is found to be locked, there are various breaching tactics that may be deployed dependent upon the tools available, experience, and expertise of officers on scene, type of door, and urgency of the situation. Some examples include mechanical breaching, i.e., with a Halligan tool or a sledgehammer, ballistic breaching, i.e., with a firearm, and explosive breaching. Training also teaches officers to seek alternate entry points, i.e., windows, doors, and to use distraction as a tactic. Did they try the doors? No. Did they try the windows? No. They didn't try a fucking thing. They did not try a fucking thing. As previously discussed in this chapter, in an active shooter situation, law enforcement has been trained to respond and immediately confront and stop the threat. There is no need to wait for special tactical units to breach a room. An UValde PD SWAT team, however, existed on the day of the incident. UPD Policy 8.3, Special Weapons and Tactics Team, effective date 12/18/2013, established the governing regulations in the selection, training, equipping, and the use of the SWAT team. This policy establishes a UPD SWAT team. Obviously. The policy requires one supervisor, one hostage negotiator, one tactical medic, one designated marksman, and a sufficient number of officers of any rank to carry out the responsibilities of the team. Additional officers could serve as alternates for the team and are not permanently assigned to the team. Additionally, the policy states that the alternates would be chosen by the same selection process as the full-time SWAT members. The 10/24/19 UPD SWAT inventory sheet contained, among other equipment, the following: a sledgehammer, a battering ram, a Halligan bar, and 2 police entry shields. Based on the 10/24/19 SWAT inventory sheet, there were 10 members on the team. Notably, UPD is a police department of approximately 26 to 30 officers. As per the 2023 NTOA Tactical Response and Operations Standards for law enforcement agencies, the recommended minimum staffing for a Tier 1 SWAT team is 34 personnel. Tier 2 SWAT team is 25 personnel. Tier 3 Tactical Response team is 16 personnel. And for a Tier 4 Perimeter Control and Containment team is 15 or less. The NTOA standards state that Tier 4 teams are not SWAT teams. Moreover, these standards delineate that Tier 4 teams are not capable of having a designated sniper, negotiator, or tactical medic. As recommended by the most recent NTOA standards, the UPD, with its limited staffing, should not be considered a SWAT team. Rather, it falls in the range of a Tier 4 Perimeter Control and Containment team. However, as per the NTOA standards, a Tier Team 4 may have the capabilities to conduct crisis entries and hostage rescue operations and active assailant situations. The UPD SWAT team, with their limited personnel and capabilities, is not an anomaly in law enforcement agencies. Most agency department SWAT teams do not align with the 2023 NTOA Tactical Response and Operations Standards for law enforcement agency recommendations. Many agencies and departments have units that they called SWAT but lack the requisite capabilities, which can undermine the confidence of its community. Okay, guys, I think for right now, we're going to leave it right there. We're going to start back on 128, tactics used at Robb Elementary. Do we have any questions? Any discussion that anybody wants to have about it before we end for the night? Oh, shit. We will be back on, I believe, Monday at 6:30. Appreciate you, JC. This one is going to take a while because it is just hard to go through and just read out all of their fucking failures at once. It's hard emotionally because it's like we stated, it's been, at that time it had been 23 years since Columbine, right? They knew what to do, and they did everything against what they are taught to do. This wasn't like this happened a year after Columbine, right? Like, this is 23 years later. They know. They've known. You know? Like, that's what, and they failed that. Like, it talks about one of the first things to do is just, hey, touch the fucking doorknob. They didn't even do that. Like, it was just, I don't even like calling it a complete failure, right? Because that would mean that, they attempted to do something. You can't fail if you don't attempt. So I don't even like calling it a failure at this point. I don't. Will we be doing any other live Saturday or Sunday, or taking some much deserved time off? I don't get to take any time off, so I'll be doing something Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, we have not been hitting our goals lately, so I don't get to take days off. But it's a part of it. Yep, and post 2001 because of 9/11, everyone is treated on having an accident command, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they didn't try. They didn't try at all. Like, and it's frustrating that they didn't try. Not tonight, Dan. I don't have any of that pulled up. Typically, I have it all pulled up. I was having a lot of computer issues the other day, so I have the bare minimum up right now. It would take me a little bit to do it, But I don't know. We might do that tomorrow on the talk. But from here on out, when we're doing the DOJ report, we will be reading it here. We might start on TikTok for a few minutes and then move everybody over here. You know what I'm saying? So, but all right, guys, one last thing before you go. If you're not subscribed on here, obviously do that. But also, you can go to brettcross.com. And don't worry, I'll get cool little shit to put up so that it tells y'all. I'm an old guy working in a young social media world, and it escapes me a lot of times. But go to brettcross.com, sign up. Subscribe, and then you get access to the Discord. And I think after I get off here, I think we're gonna go and do straight into a Q&A for tier 2 and tier 3. So I appreciate you all so much, and yeah, we're just trying to get away from the toxicity that's over there. So much love, guys, and all my tier 2 and tier 3s will be over there in the new little section. So Y'all be safe.